Hi, I'm Konstantin Baum, Master of Wine, and what can I say? It's going to be another special tasting today, as I'm going to explore the magic of aging wine. I'm going to taste the same wine from the same producer from two different vintages. One is just coming into its drinking window, while the other one is coming to its end. The wine I'm talking about is one of the most expensive and one of the most highly rated wines in the world, Château HAUT BRION. Dun dun dun! Let's go. A few months ago I did a survey on which winery is your dream winery from Bordeaux. The winner was Petrus, but the wine that came in second place surprised me a bit. Château HAUT BRION is one of the most highly regarded wineries in the world, and these two bottles together cost around $1,800, but it's maybe not the most famous Bordeaux estate. Nevertheless, I thought this was a great opportunity to share this experience with you and together explore the beauty of aging wine. HAUT BRION might be the oldest wine producing estate in Bordeaux, but its history starts far earlier than that. Thousands and thousands of years ago, the countryside around today's city of Bordeaux was carved out by rivers and a small hill started to take shape. It caught the eye of the Celtic tribes living in the region, and they called it Brion, which was their word for mount or hill, not knowing that this place is going to become famous in the future. The story of the estate started in the 16th century when Jean de Pontac constructed the Chateau, and the wines became well known because they were more age-worthy than the wines from the neighbors. King Charles II owned 169 bottles of Vino de Obriono, and Samuel Pepys wrote in his diary in the 17th century that he drank sort of a French wine called Haut Brion that hath a good and most particular taste and I never met with. Was that an English accent? No, I think that was Scottish. Anyways. Sorry. American politician and future president Thomas Jefferson was a man of great taste, and he visited the winery in 1787 and called it a specimen of what is the very best Bordeaux wine. So it came to no one's surprise that the winery was rated as one of the best in Bordeaux in the famous 1855 classification. It's the only one of the Premier Cru Classés that is located in the Pessac-Léognan region. The winery was purchased by the Dillon family in the early 20th century for a few $100,000, which is a complete joke or a great investment, depending on how you want to see it. Today, the winery has 51 hectares of vineyards, with the vast majority planted to the red grape varieties Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc. They also have some Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon. They produce 4 different wines, the Haut Brion and the Haut Brion Blanc, and then they have 2 second wines, the Clarence de Haut Brion and the Clarté de Haut Brion. But I'm going to taste the Haut Brion Rouge, the red Haut Brion, which is the flagship wine of the estate. The main difference to the other Premier Cru Classés here is that they sometimes have a majority of Merlot in their first wine. The 2012 vintage, for example, had roughly 65% of Merlot, so that's quite a lot. These two wines have a little bit less. So I'm going to taste the 2011 vintage and the 1986 vintage side by side, which should be really interesting. The 86 is well known for being quite long-lived and a little bit rustic in the beginning. The 2011 should be pretty much getting right into its drinking window. So we're going to see how the wines differ, basically. So first of all, if you look at the bottles, you see some slight differences between the two vintages. I purchased this wine at a very well-established wine merchant in Germany. So I think they came straight from the Chateau and should be in pretty much perfect condition. But still, I mean, there are differences when it comes to the capsule. The capsule color is slightly different, and the branding on the capsule is also slightly different. Also, the label looks slightly different. I mean, they haven't updated it a whole lot, but there is some slight differences when it comes to the line around the label, for example, and well, the spacing is just slightly different. So no major differences. What is special about Haut Brion is this type of bottle that just looks different to the normal Bordeaux bottle. It has wider shoulders than the bottom, and they also have the name embossed into the glass, which is a great thing because it makes it a lot more difficult to fake this wine, as the bottle is kind of special. So the blend of the 2011 is 46% Cabernet Sauvignon, 35% Merlot, and 90% Cabernet Franc. So there's quite a lot of Cabernet Franc in here. The Merlot is fairly high, but it's not the majority partner in the blend. 72% of the barriques were new, but all of it was aged in barrique. which is pretty common in Bordeaux for those high-end wines anyways. And let's open it. So as this is a fairly young wine, I'm not too concerned about the cork. You know, I've broken a few corks in the past, but I think this cork should still be pristine. I just hope it's not corked. That would be like expensive for a corked wine. So I like to take the whole capsule off just because it makes it easier to see the wine flowing out of the bottle. So if you want to make sure that you don't have a fake wine, it's also always good to check the cork. You can see the vintage on the cork here, and you can also see some information on the wine and the vintage on the side of the cork, which is a good indication. So this is a very long cork, so I want to put the whole corkscrew in there and then pull it out. So here you go, one piece, I did it. So I could decant this wine, but I don't really want to do it. I just want to let it breathe in the glass. I probably will decant the other one though. So as you can see, the color is still very dark. It's super purple. There's not a lot of garnet there along the rim. So it's still really concentrated and useful. On the nose, it's it's intense. It's complex. It's really beautiful. You can tell by the smile on my face. So the wine smells of cherries, blackberries, and a little bit of chocolate. So there's quite a bit of oak flavor still present, but it's moving into the background. It's kind of integrating into the wine. The wine is present now, but it's still very much dominated by primary and secondary flavors. Primary flavors would be flavors from the fruit, from the grapes. Secondary flavors that develop in the winery, while tertiary flavors are the flavors that develop with aging in the bottle. And you don't have a lot of tertiary flavors in this wine. It is, however, really beautiful. It's a really welcoming wine that comes at you with open arms and kind of gives you a big and warm hug. On the palate, the wine is still young. The tannins are a little bit harsh, quite young and very grippy. When tannins get older, they polymerize, so they form longer bonds and are less aggressive. They just feel less aggressive. And this is not the case here yet. The wine is still drinkable. It's enjoyable. It's beautiful. The balance between the richness and the acidity is completely there. But with a little bit more age, it would be more mellow, more enjoyable. Talking about more enjoyable, let's open the 86. So I was worried for a second here because looking at the capsule, you might also think this is the 98 vintage, but it's actually 86. I'm pretty sure of that. It says so on the label anyways. So I'm going to take the whole capsule off. This capsule is not, the other one was slightly glued to the bottle. This one is not. You see some residue here, which is completely normal. It also says Haut Brion on the cork, so everything looks great. I mean, the cork looks really, really good too. So there's a little bit of residue under the capsule, but the cork looks really good. It says Haut Brion on there. It says 1986. And this looks like it was stored in very good conditions, given that the bottle is 37 years old. So let's hope that I get this cork out in one piece. Okay, this is a really long cork, excessively long. I mean, check this out. The 1986 is a few millimeters longer than the 2011 cork. And the 2011 cork is a long cork, but if it helps. So I'm going to decant this wine, I think. But first I want to try it to make sure that it's actually, well, that it's necessary to decant it. I thought about it for a few minutes and I decided not to decant it. You see, sometimes you have to decant wine in order for it to open up. But this wine already feels pretty open. And you can also ruin a wine by decanting it as you're exposing it to a lot of oxygen. So I just want to taste this wine straight from the bottle. So this is fascinating. Even though the 1986 is a different cuvée with 62% Cabernet Sauvignon, 28% Merlot and 10% Cabernet Franc, these two wines are essentially the same. The only big difference between them is time. But you can see straight out of the bottle, this is quite a bit more garnet in color. So there are more brown elements here, basically. It's not super red, it's slightly brownish. even at its core. On the nose, you don't get a lot of fresh fruit character here. It's more dried fruit, so there are some flavors of prunes, dried figs. It's quite interesting. There's also this tertiary note of forest floor, mushroom character. It's all in there, all mixed up, but it's kind of beautiful. There's also this tobacco and dark chocolate character coming through, a little bit of leatheriness. So yeah, I mean, these are funky flavors. Maybe you don't necessarily associate them with wine, but that's what Old Bordeaux often develops into, and I like it. On the palate, the wine is more light and fresh. The 1986 is at 12.5% of alcohol, which was pretty common in Bordeaux in the 1980s. And the 2011 is at 13.5% of alcohol, but it's not just the alcohol. Older wines tend to become more light and more elegant and more linear. The acidity is still quite fresh and vibrant. The tannins are surprisingly grippy. The 86 vintage is known for producing grippy, tannic red wines in Bordeaux. It's also known as one of the better vintages in the region. The reason for that is basically that there were some cooler periods during the growing season, and there was a little bit of rain in September. There are actually a few similarities to 2011, which also experienced some cooler periods during the growing season, and it was not necessarily one of the best vintages, especially following the 2009 and 2010 vintage. The other weird coincidence is that both vintages are linked to terrible nuclear disasters. 86 was the year of the Chernobyl accident, where an incident at the power plant resulted in widespread radiation, and 2011 was the year when Fukushima experienced a big accident and there was radiation everywhere. I don't know how that affected the wine and grape growing in Bordeaux, but it's still a weird coincidence. Tasting the wines next to each other is just such a beautiful experience. The 2011, super fruity, super fresh, lots of concentration and body, whereas the 1986 has these intense tertiary aromas. I actually think we caught both wines exactly at the beginning and at the end of their drinking window. I don't think that this will last all that much longer. I'm not saying that it will be over in a few years, but I don't think it will improve much over the next years, judging from that bottle at least. While this is slowly becoming really enjoyable and pleasant, I would drink this with a steak right now. Because of the intense tannins and the intensity of the fruit flavor, this is maybe something, well, to meditate over in the evening. This tasting also shows to me that the new wave Bordeaux winemaking, which sometimes gets quite a lot of hate, is not necessarily as bad as you might think. I actually think this wine will be more interesting when it's 37 than this wine is right now. Not saying that this isn't great, but I think this is just made in a better way. I think this is more balanced. I think even though this is also from a slightly more difficult vintage, they knew much better what they did, and they had more techniques at their disposal in order to get the best out of the vineyard and out of the winery. So I'm going to rate the 1986 93 points, and I'm going to rate the 2011 95 points. I really like this wine. I think this is pretty beautiful. So thank you for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, then please like it down here. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. My question of the day is, what other crazy wine tasting should I do next? Let me know down below. I'm looking forward to your comments, but I'm also a little bit scared because I know you guys have expensive taste. Anyways, I hope I see you guys again soon. Until then, stay thirsty. And I'm so going to stay thirsty. Cheers.